Channel Red Novel Chapter 1771, A celestial spark. Large meadows covered the current planet they were on, and fields of tall grass were spread across nearly the entire globe. Rivers and streams were few and far between, but there was still plenty of water for life. Around where the tower once was, there were a few houses, but they were far between. The houses were built crudely out of wood, as each planet seemed to have a different level of advancement. For one, they didn't have ships that would allow them to travel to each planet, so they didn't even know that there were other planets with the same race. The good thing was that the guards had cleared the place of people. They had been sent away from the area of the tower. Quinn could tell this, and he was relieved of this fact. Not to mention that finally, the one and only Athos had arrived. However, he wasn't alone. Standing by his side were the two females that had a golden shine to their skin. The tower had crumbled and turned into nothing but particles that dispersed into the air, and soon it was as if it never even existed. "I thought we would be back at the tower the next time we met," Athos asked, folding his arms. "You have done a lot of unexpected things for a while now. Did you think it would go unheard? Or did you really do all this just to catch my attention?" Moving one of his arms, he opened it up, and a white portal appeared. Then, quickly popping out of it were three small figures, at least compared to the others. These three were none other than Quinn's accomplices, the three Amra who had climbed the tower on the first planet with him. "We're finally out of that place. We're finally out. Finally!" Nock shouted as soon as he landed. Dober quickly cleared his throat as he used his head to direct the other into what was going on. Turning around, they could see Quinn standing with a stranger that looked similar to him, and around 30 meters apart were Athos and two others. They were also quite far away from everything and were standing in the middle of a field whose grass reached their knees, around 100 meters away. "This is our chance. I don't know what happened. But we should run," Nock suggested. "Run? Do you think that we were just let out randomly? The person who put us in this situation is standing right there. There is no reason to run." Gio replied to his old friend. "I continue to prove to you I am not a bad person. I have released these three friends of yours, but if you do not change your mind, they might have to witness your death." Athos spoke with an expressionless face. "I asked you to get rid of my little problem, and although you didn't get rid of him, you did bring him to me." It was a change of pace from the usual people that Quinn would deal with. Now he had one less thing to worry about and one less thing to be used against him if they were to go toe to toe. "I know we talked before, but I want to talk to you again. The only thing I request is a way to head back to Earth, for you to send us there if possible," Quinn asked. "Yes, I didn't get rid of the Godslayer, at least not how you asked, but I can promise you. If you can send us both back to Earth or at least close to it, he and I will be out of your hair. He will promise to never return to you again or come back to this part of the solar system. The end result is exactly what you want, peace." Athos looked to be thinking for a bit before he said anything but eventually answered. "How could you trust a God-Slayer's words so easily? How do you know one day he won't turn and go against you or come back here against your promise?" "I trust him," Quinn answered. "He is a dear friend of mine, and if you trusted me, then you should trust me enough to believe in those I trust as well." "I'm sorry, but this has gone beyond the point where only I am involved, so I have no alternative," Athos replied. "I will give you a choice, my fellow Celestial. I can send you back, but the God-Slayer must stay." Quinn looked at Syl for only a second before turning and shaking his head. "I'm sorry, but not a chance." Syl was strong and had defeated Celestials before, maybe he could even defeat Athos, but if Quinn left and Syl was to die, this was something that Quinn would never be able to live with. "Very well, then we have no choice but to fight." Then, upon moving all of his 6 arms, a spear, a short sword, a giant shield, and a mace appeared in his hands. And in the remaining 2, there were bows and arrows, but on a close look, Quinn noticed that there were no arrows and the bowstring that would be pulled was rather thick. "You guys seem very strong, but you will be no match for us," Athos stated. "Whoa, this might be a bit tough. There's 3 of them and like 10 arms between those giants." Syl smirked, not fazed at all, even though Quinn was a little nervous, but it seemed like there was some strange new confidence in Syl. Inside the celestial space, Athos had told everyone his intentions, and in the end, he had stated that there would most likely be a fight. In fact, he was so confident in his win that he had told the Celestials that were watching to spread the word, as they would witness his power. After leaving, that was exactly what those Celestials did. They had ample time to inform the other Celestials in the space that a battle between 2 Celestials was about to begin. However, what attracted everyone's attention was the fact that a God-Slayer was also involved in this battle. It was certainly a strange situation, which was why so many were interested in witnessing the fight, and now there were around 1,000 different Celestials watching everything that was taking place. In the end, the Celestials who made this space had to enlarge it so everyone could fit in. It was then that someone who was really curious decided to enter the space. Some strange things were starting to occur, and some had attempted to get in contact with her several times. Finally, she had entered the space, no longer being able to ignore what was happening. This place always makes me feel somewhat glum, which is why I don't wish to enter it too often. Now, let's see what all the commotion was about. It didn't take long for the Celestial to catch the wind and get to the area that was talked about. She soon could see that the rumors were true. She stared into the white energy deeply as she looked at everyone involved and clenched her hands tightly. "I have tried so hard to keep things in control, is it just impossible? Earth is where I came from, so I have an attachment to it, but if others find out what is going on, it will be in big trouble." The Celestial was none other than Bliss, one of the strongest Celestials who resided in the Milky Way galaxy. "In a way, everything about to happen is my fault. I sent him here, hoping he would understand and learn the dangers of his actions, but it seems somehow he has managed to make things worse and catch the attention of everyone. My foresight doesn't really work on other Celestials, making it difficult for me to precut anything to do with him, or maybe it's because he is a Talon. Either way, if this gets out of hand and the unexpected occurs, I may have to speak to him," Bliss thought. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1772, the most infamous group somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy, a giant ship, shaped like the front part of a handgun, was floating peacefully. It could hold around 6,000 people, including a fleet of vessels ready to be used at any time. It was one of the most advanced, state-of-the-art ships created with the help of Logan Green. However, not once had Logan Green ever stepped foot on this ship because it did not belong to him. Instead, it belonged to the infamous group, the Blade family. The enormous ship was designed in a similar style to the Bertha ships back in the day. After all, it was what the Cursed family had used a long time ago, and when the Blades had decided to split away from the Cursed group, nearly all members had been part of the Cursed faction. The Blade children saved from the island and raised on the Cursed faction ship had made it resemble the place as much as they could. Only now, it had a modern touch, and there were a few more additional facility areas than before. At the moment, there were around 2,000 people on board the Blade ship. It was nowhere near max capacity, but not all those on the Blade ship were members of the Blade family or had the Blade ability. For one, many of the kids went on to have families and brought their families on board the ship. Some wished to follow in the previous generation Blades' footsteps and learn the ability, but some just wanted to live a simple life. Then, there was the orphanage based on the ship. Due to the original Blade kids feeling a bit like orphans, not growing up with birth parents to look after them, they decided to open up a facility. At times, the Blades would help out certain planets if there were tricky situations. For instance, even if a strong beast attacked a shelter, the Blades would send out a group of people to help them. However, with fighting wars, there were always those left without any guardian, which was why they created the facility in the first place. There was everything on board the ship. Shops, a canteen, a cinema, a school, and so on. The ship was designed such that the Blades never have to leave the place, and of course, they could leave as they wished. If their role were significant on the crew, there would be rotations and such, but everything worked like clockwork and worked well. One huge addition to the ship was the prison on the bottom of the ship. It worked like most prisons, but its main purpose for being built was to capture the chain that didn't deserve to be called human. It was the Blade's mission to capture these people and ensure they didn't ruin the lives of others. If there were any children or they were young and had been taught by the chained, they would attempt to raise them at the orphanage and send them to school. No one believed that one should be punished for who their parents were, and the Blades knew that best. Currently, the Blades were having a meeting inside one of the meeting rooms on board the ship. The head of each facility and department on board the ship were gathered here. These were not the strongest fighters, but were the most respected among those on the vessel. There was the head of education, head of medical facilities and more, and standing at the front of them all was a rare dark-haired person who was treated just like any other Blades due to being with them since the beginning. This person was Shiro. He let out a big sigh as he looked at one of the seats that were currently empty. A digital plaque in front of it stated this seat belonged to the head of Squad 2, one of the 3 attack forces that the Blades used. It was not the only empty seat, as Squad 1, right next to Shiro, was also vacant. I guess we just have to start the meeting without them. Shiro sighed, wishing at least for this one they would turn up because this meeting would be pretty significant. Let me first update you on the projects we have been working on so far. Shiro went on to first talk about everything going on the ship. Then, he congratulated a few of them on their achievements, but there were nervous looks on everyone's faces because they knew that Shiro always did this when there was something concerning. He would praise everyone even for a minor thing before dropping a giant bomb on top of their heads. And now, unfortunately, we have to get to the unpleasant parts, Shiro began as everyone in the room bated their breath. As you all know, we have received a distress message from none other than Logan Green himself. Although he has asked us for help in the past on small things here and there, never has he asked for us to contact Sil. An image of the current Sil appeared on screen. Everyone in the room knew of Sil. In fact, there wouldn't be a person on the ship that didn't know of Sil because of his achievements in the past, and what he was doing was taught to them all. However, nearly no one in the room had ever seen him, to the point where some even thought he was a myth, a fake who didn't even exist but was talked about to keep them inspired. After all, over the last 1,000 years, plenty of newborns had his powers, but not a single one was able to produce a soul weapon like his that made up for the Blade family's weakness. He was indeed one of a kind person. Unfortunately, we have not received a reply from Sil, nor has any of our monitoring equipment been able to sense him coming back this way. I was sitting on this one for a while, hoping for Sil to arrive by now, but he hasn't. But one thing is clear, Logan Green needs our help more than ever, and if he asked for Sil, it would be at the level where the whole of humanity's existence is at stake. At first, some department heads in the room didn't believe what Shiro was saying. In their eyes, the world, even Earth, was now more peaceful than ever. There were only battles between a few larger forces, but these skirmishes never involved the general populace. Of course, there were cases where red vampires had attacked normal humans, but by now, that was just something everyone needed to live. It was only recently that crazy events started to occur. Once they saw that Shiro wasn't laughing, those who chuckled and smiled quickly shut up. Even if they were at this ship's top of the hierarchy, they wouldn't dare to relax in front of Shiro. I left this information to the end for a reason. Sil stated. Squad 1 isn't here because there have been sightings of Russ. I know we believed that we had already dealt with him, but it turns out he's alive and kicking. As I say this, Squad 1 is gathering information on him and trying to find his whereabouts. He holds a large grudge against us, so he is a big threat as well, which is why I have decided to go help Logan Green in person. If Sil can't go, then at least I must get there on time. Immediately, everyone looked at each other and started to whisper. Shiro was strong and was perhaps one of the strongest Blades they had. However, he was not at the level of Jake Green, whom they didn't consider a Blade. If Sil was as great as Shiro made him out to be, they were sending someone who was perhaps 1/1000 of the power that they needed to overcome the problem. I'll be honest, but don't you think you should just stay out of it? The Blades have made a good life for themselves, and we will be able to protect ourselves better. We're stronger together. One of the heads of the department said. I don't want to offend, but there is a good chance that sending you out there won't make a difference. So in the end, is it even worth it? You make a good point, but don't forget that I won't be alone. There is a reason why I have been able to survive tough battles until now, but you are right. I believe the Green need more power, so I wanted to discuss who we could send out with me while maintaining everything going here. The room was silent. There appeared to be next to no volunteers, but that was when they heard the door slide open. A rugged voice boomed through the hole, overwhelming the silence instantly. I heard everything, and I will be going with you. That should be enough, right? A man stepped inside the hole and soon sat on Squad 2 leader's seat, nearly breaking it from the pressure and making it squeak. The others glanced at him but soon looked away, hoping to avoid eye contact. The only person unaffected by his presence was Shiro himself. With a smile, he replied. Of course, you are welcome, Borden. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1773, Sides. After the incidents in Green City, many people felt anxious about the safety measures. The whole mood was as if Logan Green had let them down. In the beginning, many people didn't know about the attackers and didn't believe the words of the witnesses when the latter said it was the red vampires who had infiltrated and were the main reason behind the chaos. The main reason behind this, besides their trust in Green City, was that the death toll was only 2. Considering it was an attack from one of the most powerful factions, the Red Vampires, this number was too low. However, there were news outlets and sources from Earth that supported Pure and had spun this story as much as they could and even spiced it up to show Green City as a weakened hollow shell and the vampires as the scourge of humanity. Look, there is one thing you can't change, and it's the fact that the vampires attacked Logan Green. He works closely with the Vampire Corps because he believes in the vampires more than his own race, and now look what happened. The vampires were the ones who attacked, rather than Pure. One person had commented online. Just because there are a few bad apples doesn't mean the whole tree is poisonous. The Vampire Corps even saved my uncle's life, and they have fought against the Red Vampires just as hard as any other group. But, unfortunately, this latter group happens to be vampires as well, and if they were a group of humans doing this, then you would just say they are a bunch of terrorists. To the one above, that's my point. These vampires feast on our blood and eventually take over us. It's in their nature. The whole Vampire Corps thing is fake as well. Just a facade to confuse us, and I bet they're even working with the Red Vampires. The human race was mainly split among 3 solar systems. Earth's solar system had the most influential humans, and they were more directly involved in the political struggle between Pure and Logan Green. The Beast solar system was full of individual-run factions with powerful travelers, such as the Bree family. Meanwhile, the third solar system, where the vampires originally lived, was now inhabited by the Greylash family, who had agreed to stay neutral so everyone there could live peaceful lives. Although humans lived across these 3 different solar systems and elected their leaders differently, Earth was similar to the old ways. There would be an official election and votes from all the planets in Earth's solar system to declare which party should rule. The current leader was Logan Green. A member of the now forgotten cursed faction that had saved the world, creator of several inventions that made the lives of everyone more effortless, and he seemed like a genuine person who cared for people as well. Still, due to the fear of an attack either by demon-tier beasts, the Dalki, or the Red Vampires, strength was an important factor when choosing who to lead them. Logan had the Vampire Corps on his side supporting him. While the Pure had the Dampiers, although they were never officially recognized as a group, people knew they were working together. With the Red Vampires currently being the main threat, people were starting to favor the presence of the Dampiers. It was also why all of these groups had attended the chained faction leader's wedding, hoping to gain the favor of another influential faction and get more people on their side. After all, people had to be careful when choosing where to live and who to vote for. Because of the history and the tension between the people who claimed to be part of one group or another, there was always a chance of a quarrel breaking out. If that did happen, they would also need to choose a side even if they aren't part of the whole conflict. With all of this, for the first time since Logan had decided to run for the elections, the polls indicated it was highly likely that Pure would come into power. In the Green Tower, Logan was cool-headed even after learning this news. But, truth be told, it did somewhat disappoint him, not in the results but the reaction from the general populace. Logan had stayed on this planet for the people. He had decided to help them because that was what Quinn would have wanted. But now, many saw him as the villain because he was suppressing the Dhampirs and Pure from attacking the vampires. Nonetheless, he needed to focus on the task in front of him. Remember, the main objective, for now, is to save Vincent, not to take out the red vampires, Logan said. While there, it would be best if we could figure out their system, how they work, their numbers and any important information. All this information will allow us to hit the red vampires and get rid of them once and for all. Then the third objective would be to obtain the red heart, if possible. This message soon reached Peter, Mooka, Mitchell, Minnie, Linda, Jessica, Hannah, and Jake Green. But, in truth, Logan wanted to send his best people along with them to get rid of the red vampires after what they had done. However, after reassessing the video, he knew that no one on their side currently had the strength to take on Laxmus. Jake Green could probably go toe-to-toe with him, but to win a fight was another thing altogether. On top of that, he wouldn't be going himself because he feared the city could suffer another attack. Whether it be Pure or extremist, he didn't know, but he had to stay at least and protect in case anyone tried to take advantage of the ongoing unrest. Jake will be carrying a portable teleporter. Although I was the one who had banned these, this is an emergency situation. If the situation gets dire, use the portable teleporter to contact me, and I will come with reinforcements. Apart from Jake, who will be in disguise, no one knows about this mission since you aren't directly associated with any factions. However, you are a part of Quinn's group, which is why you are the best people to do this. I don't want to force any of you into this, but with the red heart in Laxmus's hands, all of humanity's lives are at stake. And a group mainly of non-humans are trying to save it. Peter couldn't help but comment. Help is on the way. Logan smiled at the comment Peter had made. They will meet you at the meeting point I have shared with Jake. I wish you all luck, and if I hear anything about Quinn, I promise to inform you as soon as possible. At an unknown location on Earth, a large group of around 300 were sprinting through a rocky mountain area at an incredible speed. They would either jump sideways or hop over difficult terrain while running straight ahead. In the front of the group was one covered head to toe in a rose gold armor. In addition, she adorned a pointed helmet inclined backwards with a red feather on its side. This helmet covered most of her head and face, only leaving enough space for her eyes and cherry red lips. Out the back of the helmet, one could see her waving blonde hair. Not looking back or slowing down, she continued to run ahead of the rest of the group because she was confident that whoever she faced, she could deal with them with no problem at all. Then, the ends of her hair started to change in color slightly, turning slightly black. It looks like we are close. The Dhampirs will be at the red base any second now. Agent 4 said, pushing his glasses back onto his nose. Yes, this is interesting to see what will happen. Because I'm sure both parties will be surprised. After all, I doubt he will do anything if his most faithful and hardworking servant is in trouble. For now, you take the sidelines and do nothing as we watch this whole affair unfold, but we might need to act soon if things go unexpected. Zero smiled. I hope the red vampires are successful, and then we can move on to the next step. Zero thought. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1774, The Red Split. Xander was nervously pacing back and forth. It hadn't been long since Layla had left, and Vincent was in his shadow space, but then again, it wasn't really his shadow space. Anyone who had access to the crystal he was using would also be able to use the shadow space, as long as they knew how to operate it, and quite a few people in the Red Vampires knew how to handle it. Will Layla have trouble? Should I have gone with her? Xander thought. I know she's strong and shouldn't have any problems getting into the facility. Of course, no one would stop her from walking in there, but I feel like once the nest crystal is gone, everyone will notice it, right? How will she escape after that? Several thoughts went back and forth through Xander's head since too much time seemed to have passed for such a simple task. So now he was debating whether to leave or not. Having made his decision, Xander walked towards the exit of the cave, and as he was about to push it open, he could hear the mechanism going off and part of the wall starting to move. Then, when Xander saw the two small horns he had come to adore, he could finally breathe a massive sigh of relief. What took so long? Don't tell me there's a bunch of people behind you or something. Xander asked, peeking his head out to look behind Layla, and sighed in relief upon noticing there was no one else. From underneath the black robe that she was wearing, she pulled out a crystal that looked like it had space directly inside it. This was the space crystal. It was clear that it was a type of nest crystal, and with only one in the whole settlement, Xander realized that what they had been planning for so long had become a reality. I needed to talk to them. We have to make them aware of everything going on. We brought them along into this mess. Anyway, bring Vincent out now. Let's see what we can do. Layla said. Xander did as was told, and in the next instant, a shadow emerged out of Xander's crystal, leaving Vincent as it slowly dispersed. At the same time, the crystal became slightly lighter in color. Layla kneeled beside Vincent's body and placed the space crystal on the latter's body around the wound. The crystal stayed in place, but nothing was happening. There was no reaction from the crystal, nor was there a reaction from Vincent. She closed her eyes and used her ability, enveloping her hand in green flames. This time she placed the crystal and her hand onto the wound, hoping for something to happen. Still, there was no effect. Again, she tried to gather her chi to drain the energy out of the nest crystal, but nothing seemed to be working. Don't tell me, you jumped the gun and just got the nest crystal hoping something would happen? Xander asked, already slapping his hand on his forehead. Look, I thought he had a nest crystal before, and we have one now that it would just do its own thing or something. Layla replied. I panicked. I know we need to save him and what will save him, but I just don't know how this thing works and thought we could figure it out. Seeing how Layla was panicking, Xander felt like he should have noticed it before, but Layla wasn't acting entirely like herself. And it was clear it wasn't because of Vincent or Elaxmus, but the most likely reason was to the face of the person she was trying to save. There were a lot of sleepless nights for her back then. Then, how about we go back to the laboratory? But this time, we will go back together, Xander said. There should be someone that knows how the crystal works in that lab if they use its energy on the clones, but we have to act now before Laxmus finds out. He hasn't found out already, has he? He asked as a worrying expression appeared on his face. Layla shook her head and was already leaving the room, with Xander tailing not far behind her. So what exactly did you say to June and Kev? Xander asked. They know what our goal has been since day one. They have managed to enjoy their life here for a long time already. You and I should have also left this world a long time ago. Whatever happens to them or us, they will understand. Layla replied. Not sure whether he liked the answer or not, Xander said nothing because he knew this day would come. He just never thought it would be so soon. Both Xander and Layla were no longer in disguise as they walked through the settlement. It was easier for them to travel with their guardian ranks and Red Vampire leader respectively, especially to the lab they were heading to, and they could see the lab where Layla had been not so long ago. So, what will we do if no one knows how this thing works? Xander asked. Well, then I guess we just need to leave this place. Of course, Laxmus will chase us, and we might not even make it far, but maybe we can meet someone who can help, or maybe the Dampiers will end up attacking this place before we get caught. Layla and Xander only needed to show their appearance to get into the lab, and the guards didn't ask any questions as to why Layla had returned after leaving so soon. They noticed everything in the laboratory seemed to be working as they walked through the facility and its metallic hallways. "I'm a bit worried," Xander whispered. "Even though you stole the crystal only 10 minutes ago, everyone inside here is acting so normal. Don't they have a mechanism that tells them when the nest crystal is in use and when it stops? Or wouldn't they notice that a large energy source suddenly disappeared? So why isn't there an alarm? And why did they just let us in as if nothing happened and everything was normal?" Although Xander was thinking with his head, Layla was quickly pacing through to where she had stolen the crystal, hoping to find someone or a few people they could ask questions to. Finally, they had reached the main door, which someone had already opened. It was a large, heavy metal door that required access to open from the staff. Walking into the place, they could see the several giant containers of blood, and finally, they had reached the main lab where the staff would be looking after and operating the nest crystal. Damn it! Upon entering the lab, Xander couldn't help but curse because the last person they wanted to see in the world right now, Laxmus, was standing there with his hands behind his back. Based on a staff member's body lying ripped apart on the floor and the blood spilt all over the floor, they knew Laxmus was already aware of the situation. "This is to see," Laxmus said, looking at the two, being already aware of their presence. "I just received news that someone has stolen the next crystal, and now my whole mood is ruined. Also, I have yet to alert the entire base to let the thief think they're safe. But you see, these workers here told me that a woman had entered here not too long ago, and it seemed like the crystal went missing around the same time that woman entered. So this makes me wonder why the female in question returned to this place. Was it a coincidence?" Laxmus asked as he walked toward the two of them. Seeing this, Xander took deep breaths in and out due to fear and panic. "Calm down, we can get out of this situation. He has no proof right now and is just bluffing. We can get out of this if we say the right thing." From the corner of his Eve, he glanced toward Layla and could see she had already pulled out her black sword and was holding it in her hands, while her horns now appeared to be made of lava. She was ready for a fight. "I forgot, with her here, it's impossible to talk it out," Xander thought. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1775, The Same Power. Although Xander believed they could get out of this situation by talking, Layla didn't think the same. After all, she had worked closest to Laxmus for a while and knew she was already a prime suspect, not to mention that Laxmus was the type of person to act first. Seeing the dead research worker in the lab was enough proof of that. Either way, they would have to fight until Layla could prove she didn't take the nest crystal, which was impossible because she had done. So she took out the strange black short sword, and its marking began to pulse. It seemed synced with the horns on her head, as they would pulsate in red, on and off. For a second, Layla gritted her teeth and squinted hard but quickly opened her eyes and regained her composure, balancing herself. "Oh, what is this?" A voice resounded in Layla's head, almost as if someone was shouting in her ear. At the same time, she also heard heart-wrenching screams of people. Concentrating, she focused hard to suppress the other sounds so she could listen to the sword talking to her. "We just went through a tough fight not too long ago where you needed to use me, and now you need to use me again. I mean, you should try and fight for yourself for." The sword stopped when it noticed the opponent in front of it. "Please tell me it's not true," the sword said. "Tell me you aren't going up against him. Aren't you two on the same side?" "Never have been. I need you to help me, really help me this time. I am determined and promise that everything will not be the same as last time. I know the two of you get your power from the same source, so I want to know if there will be any trouble between you," Layla asked. At the same time, Laxmus was thinking along similar lines. "I see. So you won't step in, will you? So you still allow her to use her power, and you still allow me to use mine? Is this your way of us proving to you which one is more worthy?" Laxmus asked, but there was no reply. Which usually, Laxmus took as a yes. Very well, I don't know why you are doing this, but it seems you wish to disturb what I have created. Laxmus didn't hold back as his body immediately started to transform, and unlike when he entered the arena, his whole body was changing this time. His entire body was growing with muscle, making him almost twice the size he was. His skin turned from pale to an almost pure black, while white lines of energy pulsated where his veins would be visible. His ears became as large as an elephant but were pointed sharp like bats. His mouth also became bigger, revealing an enormous set of sharp fangs. Next were his eyes, which were now completely red, and there was no white in them, and finally, a set of wings extended out of his back, looking exactly like that of bats. It was a horrifying image, similar to what Laxmus looked like when he last transformed. Then, the radiating energy around him made him look like someone who didn't belong to this world, not the vampires, humans, or any other known species. When the transformation was complete, a wave of energy escaped from Laxmus's body, causing the nearby vampires in the rooms to get thrown back. "Get behind me," Layla ordered Xander. Lifting her sword, she spun it, and a purple fog came out. When the energy reached them, it swooped around the two of them and continued. "I'm going to advise you again. Will you reconsider this fight? I will help you as you have been feeding me well, and you seem to be one of the most mentally strongest people who has ever owned me. But even I'm not sure if we can win together," the sword claimed. The wave of energy they had just felt wasn't from an attack or anything like that. It was simply from Laxmus's transformation and using all the celestial energy he had at his disposal. Reaching behind her, Layla had pulled out the nest crystal and threw it straight behind her to Xander. "Take it, and run away. Find someone who can use it, maybe even go to Logan Green, but get away from here, and don't come back until you have some way of stopping this guy," Layla ordered. Hearing those words, Xander was angry because Layla had already somewhat given up. She was simply saying she couldn't beat him and could only buy some time. When did it turn out like this? You protecting me instead of me protecting you, Xander thought while running out of the lab. He wouldn't let Layla's sacrifice be in vain. He knew it wouldn't matter if he stayed back because if she couldn't deal with Laxmus, he wouldn't be the latter's match either. This was why he decided through his head instead of his heart. Exiting the entire building, Xander could see several vampires and squad leaders heading toward the lab. It made him grit his teeth harder as he saw what mess Layla would have to try and get out of. However, they weren't the main concern. Jumping up, Xander landed on one of the building's rooftops and started to run across the town, avoiding as many people as possible. I shouldn't worry too much. Not everyone in the Red Vampires is aligned with Laxmus. There will definitely be someone willing to help Layla as well. Maybe I can do something. As Xander thought this, his worst fears came to light, as he could see a figure with a hood in front of him in the distance. Then, looking to his left, right, and behind him, he found himself surrounded by 3 more, a total of 4, and all wearing hoods covering their face. Xander, we will give you a chance as another fellow guardian. Please give yourself in, and don't let this turn ugly. One of the guardians called out in a male voice. You guys know nothing, Xander shouted back. Don't you know what type of person Laxmus is? Didn't some of you used to follow Quinn? He would have never used the red crystal to turn everyone into vampires, and that might not even be Laxmus's end goal in the first place. How can you trust someone like him? Xander's whole body had turned into a mist, but it was impossible to cover the vast area that all guardians were covering. They were standing too far apart. Still, out of the mist, red aura lines came out, like a single blade towards the others. Some of the guardians avoided this, while 1 or 2 of them had used their shadow to stop the attack, with one physically grabbing the red aura and throwing it out to the side, hitting one of the buildings. This is going to be a tough fight with 4 of them. I can't use my shadow because I'm low on it, and Vincent is inside the space. The only good thing is that while he's in there, his wound and state don't downgrade because of the slow flow of time. Still, fighting against one of them would be hard enough, never mind four, and they know my missed ability well, having fought side by side for years. When Xander thought things couldn't get worse, it looked like another knotted vampire had arrived in a black robe. So there were now 5 guardians that he had to face. Oh right, and the longer this fight goes on, the more guardians and maybe even more people will get involved. Don't any of you care about Layla? Xander shouted, hoping to convince some of them. She is a leader of the red vampires as well. Surely some of you follow her more and not Laxmus. The two are in a stalemate at the moment. Trying to convince one of the guardians to switch was the only thing Xander could think of, even though he knew it was unlikely. The guardians always respected Laxmus more, unlike the regular red vampires, because he was the one that had given them their shadow powers. The 5 kept their distance. Then, simultaneously they raised hands and started swinging away, producing multiple red slashes of aura towards the mist. There were so many attacks that at least one was bound to hit Xander, and he also knew this. Trying to survive, he remained in the fog, releasing his own bloody aura, striking and breaking them when the two forces collided, but it seems that he'll soon be finished, as he will not be able to stop all of them. Just then, leaping from the ground, 2 figures entered the mist, and suddenly, more aura appeared out of it. And it turned out that the new auras were just as powerful as the Guardians' attacks. So at that moment, all the Guardians decided to stop their attacks to see what was happening. The mist from Xander slowly dissipated. Now, standing by his side were a man and a woman. The man had show hair, while the woman had dark brown hair that went up to her shoulders and a hair band holding it. "We will help you," the female said. "June. Kev, what are you?" Xander was speechless. "You have always told us that you're training us for this very day. So here we are." "Don't worry, Dad," the male vampire replied. "Thanks for watching and subscribe my channel."